We thank you very much for tuning into the No Fruit Podcast. So today, some people see 60 as the beginning of slowing down, while others see it as the start of living fully. So today we're joined by Marita, a personality expert and voice of wisdom, who is helping women redefine what purpose, joy, and growth look like in the latter seasons of their life. Let's talk about it right after this.
Let's talk about love and marriage, the way that God intended. Life experience, here we share it. The No Fruit Podcast. Something from any step, No Fruit Podcast. Will help your spirit transform.
So we thank you very much for tuning in today. So let me give you just a little background about our guest today. She is a renowned personality expert. She's a speaker and author who has spent decades helping individuals understand themselves and others through personality insights. With a passion for empowering women in every season of life, she now focuses on helping women 60 plus embrace purpose, joy, and continued growth. Now let's understand something as well. We did our homework about this guest as well. She is also empowered by her mother, right? But maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later.
That's correct.
And so, so we're going to talk about that in a moment. But I just want y'all to know that we are truly honored and grateful to have this guest with us today. Marita, thank you very much for coming on to the show.
Well, my pleasure. I appreciate being with you.
Thank you. Thank you. And so, we have a question. What is the biggest lie women are told about life after 60, and how has that shaped the way they see themselves?
Well, I think the biggest lie would be that you're now old and that, you know, for many of us, we're retired, maybe not quite at 60, but you get a little further up there. I'm 67. And so you get up there and you think you're retired, and people worry. I mean, I've got a friend right now who's retiring in May, and she is my age, so she's a little older for retiring, and she's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. And I'm like, well, I don't know how I ever had time to work. And because life is so fun at 60 plus, because for most of us, the kids are gone and grown. They're out of the house. For most of us, we still have good health, and that's a key part of it. Health is a really important part, because if you don't have your health, you really don't have that luxury that I talk about in my blog. And then the other thing is that for most of us, we're in retirement getting Social Security. We have perhaps a retirement from our job. And so we have resources. Perhaps our house is paid for by now, or things like that. So we have time, we have health, and we have resources. And that's something that most people don't look towards, and it's a great place to be in life.
So, unfortunately, I mean, I'm not a lady.
No, I noticed that. I'm glad you noticed that too. There's no gender identity.
Yes, I know, right? You know, but just speaking about that, not knowing what to do after a certain age, a certain point. Because unfortunately, we've been conditioned to be in a certain place. We've been conditioned to have a certain mindset and not think outside the box. And so unfortunately, when we are outside of the normal everyday life, we have no idea exactly what it is, and don't know now how to deal with that level of freedom.
Yes.
Like we've never been free before.
Yeah, because you've been totally focused on your job, or you've been totally focused on raising your kids. And for a lot of women in particular, once the kids are gone and the nest is empty, they feel an emptiness inside, not just an empty nest, but an emptiness. And they feel like they don't have a purpose any longer.
So how would you influence someone to reconsider, maybe reprogram that mindset of finding my why at this point? Because again, everything doesn't have to be so linear. Like, hey, this is one thing, I got to do it for the rest of my life. You do have other stops in your life where you can reinvent yourself, find a starting place or whatever it is. So how would you encourage someone to say, you know what, let's flip the switch on this one over here and keep it moving?
Well, for me, even focusing on this topic, which I do, is a new chapter for me. It's a new era because obviously when I was younger, but I started this particular blog, and I have a blog called The Best Life Project, and it's all about providing women over 60 with ideas, instruction, and encouragement to live their best life. And I started that 3 years ago. Like I said, I'm 67, so I was 64 when I started this blog. And that's a whole new chapter for me. And for me personally, it was 100% God inspired. Like I had a dream in the night, kind of dream, not a Martin Luther King I have a dream, but I had a dream in the night that I saw stuff. And you know how dreams are, that you don't, when you wake up, you often kind of know that dream took place, but when you try to explain it to someone else, the words aren't there because the dreams we have while we're asleep often don't exactly fit together.
Right.
But when I woke up from this particular dream, I felt strongly impressed that for me, I am right now, this was 3 years ago, but I'm still gratefully in the same place. But I'm in a second marriage. I have been married 11 years. I used to be a quite famous Christian speaker. And I've written 20 books. My best-selling book is Wired That Way. And it's now in its 20th year of publication. And so I used to be on the stage a lot, traveling around a lot, and and getting a lot of applause and accolades and book sales and so forth. And you would think that if I was to say to myself, when was my best life? When was I living my best life? That I would think that time on the stage with the accolades that I received is my best life. But when I thought about it, and that was the question that came out of my dream, when I thought about it, I realized that, no, I'm living my best life right now.
Yeah.
This person, and at the time I had not yet retired, I was still a remodeling contractor. And so when I looked at my life, I thought, this me and my second marriage, living in Lubbock, Texas, that I moved here when I got married, and I haven't written a new book in 20 years. And I write articles for our local senior magazine. But, I'm like, I'm living my best life. And so that, for me, it was truly a divine inspiration of how I began to live my best life. But for others, one of the things you asked, how can other people look at their life this way? And I would say to ask yourself, what are some of the things that you have always wanted to do, but never had the time or ability to be able to do? And maybe go take some classes. For me, again, personally, I started painting, art style painting, not painting walls as a remodeling contractor, which I did plenty of, but art painting. And I woke up one day, and for the first time in my life, I was like, what do I want to do? And that was something I'd never had the freedom to ask myself before.
Yeah, and that ties back into what Maurice said. You're like, hey, you get to a point in life where now you have the freedom.
Yes.
And it's almost like I think it as reverting back to being that 5-year-old, and it's like, hey, little Becky, hey, Johnny, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you think of one career, and you kind of lead that path, and you get to be a teenager in high school, and it's like, okay, now you start thinking about college and what to do and how to make that career become a reality. But then you get to where you are now, as you're saying, you're 60, and now you have to reimagine, what do I want to be as a grown-up? After the career is over and you've checked those things, those boxes off, like you said, you go back to the things you loved when you were 5 years old. And you do that again, you pull out those crayons and those coloring pencils and those paint brushes, and you become creative in that way. And it's great because I think about my grandfather, who was in his 70s, and he started to learn how to play piano.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, wow, why do you wait till you're 70 to do this? But he had the time to do that.
Exactly.
And he had the community. So, again, I think what happens with people who are older, you move away from the community of the workplace. How do you build that community and keep that community when you are now not so connected?
Yes, and that is a challenge, truly.
Yes.
And I do actually have a whole blog post on my blog, what I think I call it building your merry little band. And that's what I call, your friend support group.
Yes.
Because we definitely need that. And I'm a firm believer in that friends are very important and that support, the friends who can pray for us, who can encourage us, who can lift us up. And, but one of the ways you mentioned your father, Kay, and a lot of men I know in this particular age group go into, for example, woodworking. And they take that talent that they've always had, and they're able to do very artistic things with it. And so that's another area that people, you can take classes. And if you're interested in something, going to classes where you're going to find people who have a similar interest to you is a great way to get a new tribe around you, a new support system. Church, of course, is another great way to find people. For women, going to the women's Bible study is a great way. But it can be very difficult when your network has been focused on your children or around your job. And I think that's one of the really, as we age, as people now are, I'm assuming, retired, have that time, making sure you have that support system around you is so important. When I moved to Lubbock, Texas, almost 11 and a half years ago now, when my husband and I got married, I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I remember when we'd been married just 6 months, I cried to him, literal tears down my face. And I said, I don't even have enough friends to have a dinner party. And I was having a little pity party because I did not have enough friends to have a dinner party. And so I made a concentrated effort, a serious effort to make friends in my new hometown. And now I have so many friends that in order to have a dinner party, I have to have a lottery to determine who's going to come. And because truly, Maurice, I realized that I was not doing what I love to do, which is cook and entertain.
Yeah.
Because I now had so many friends that I didn't want people to feel left out. And so as a result, I was not entertaining as I like to do. And so I sent out an email to my friends and said, I got this idea. It was really an epiphany, and it's kind of explained that I hadn't been having dinner parties because I didn't want to leave anyone out. And I said, I'm going to do a lottery. And if you're interested in being a part of it, let me know. And basically everybody did. And probably the only ones who didn't are the ones who didn't actually read the email. But, that's their loss. And so I made a list, and when I have an idea to cook, what I want to do, I send out an email to that list and say, who's available on this date? And I put them down, and depending on how many of them there are, I either roll the dice or I have right here a little bucket of numbers. And this is what I use to draw for my dinner party. I write them on a list. They all get a number. I draw the numbers, and once they've been once, they can't come again for a year.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, that's kind of a silly thing, but it's what works for me, and that's what I enjoy doing.
Well, I'm going to tell you, there's something that, as I'm listening to you, excuse me, who gave you permission to be you? I mean, so I'm saying that because we don't give ourselves permission, because we have been so locked down in these traditions. We've been so locked down in becoming what someone else expected for us to be, that unfortunately we lose who we really are. So who gave you permission to have this dinner party? And people, people don't like to gamble, right? Like, I'm not going to be part of the lottery, whatever it might be. So who gave you that permission? And where did you find that? Because a lot of times we don't even give ourselves that, let alone someone else giving us that.
Well, you mentioned earlier that I think your term was a renowned personality expert. And I think that's one of the things about understanding your personality type. And that's the theme of my book, Wired That Way. And my personality type is the type that I'm obviously outgoing. I like to have people in my house. I like to entertain. I like to be busy. And I'm creative. As my husband, who is a CPA, says, dates, times, and numbers are not your friends. And so I think when we understand what our personality is, that helps us to not, many times people think they don't like the concepts of personality typing because they say it puts you in a box. And in reality, what it does is it releases you from the box that other people have put you in and allows you to be who you are. And for many people, understanding their personality type can be a very eye-opening and freeing experience.
And it helps you
so I would say that that's a big part of, it's not a direct answer to your question of who gave me permission to be me, but it's when you know who you are and how you are wired, the things that I want to do are not the same things that someone else wants to do.
Right.
And knowing who you are gives you permission to be you.
And it will also allow you to better understand those in your company. You'll know how to interact better with them because you know better about yourself. And you're more secure in who you are. So you're like, yeah, I'm going to respond this way around that person.
Exactly. I did a podcast interview yesterday with a woman, and the name of her podcast is Women Seeking Blissful Retirement. And we specifically focused on girlfriend trips. This particular podcast host is heading into her 70th birthday, and she's decided that she wants to do a girlfriend trip for her 70th birthday, and she's never done a girlfriend trip. So I've written a blog post on that, and we talked about that specifically. But the reason I'm bringing this up to you now, Kay, is that I went on a trip with some girlfriends. There were a total 6 of us that went last June, almost a year ago. And we went on this trip to Turks and Caicos in the Caribbean. And when they invited me to join the group, I had to look at the personality makeup of the group. And of the group, I was the only one who's the outgoing, the fun-loving risk taker. They are all more reserved, more low-key, not risk takers. And before I accepted to go on this trip with them, I had to kind of look at that and think, am I going to be happy? Because this was an expensive trip. It's not just going down the street for a weekend. It was an expensive trip, and I had to analyze their personalities and say to myself, can I be happy on this trip if all we do is lay on the beach and read? Because that's more their idea of a good time. And I decided that, yes, I do love to read. I've got my Kindle, and I do love the beach. And so I was like, okay, yes, I decided I could do that. But I also had to have a little talk with myself and say to myself, Marita, if you're the only one who wants to go snorkeling, you need to do that. If you're the only one who wants to go do whatever, and it turned out, yes, I was the only one who wanted to do several things. And had I not had that discussion with myself first, and I went not being aware of the personality of the women with whom I was traveling, I could have very easily been angry that, you guys, we're here on this great island and y'all don't want to go do anything. But because I understood that, then I went into it with realistic expectations.
You're saying something heavy and deep. I mean, not only with girlfriends, but, as married couples, you know.
Yes, totally. It definitely applies there. My husband is certainly different from me.
As I hear your husband's a CPA, so, is he the one that's going to go snorkeling and be the, outgoing person? And,
no.
I knew the answer. I didn't want you to say.
And that's why girlfriends are so important.
Right.
Yes.
I think for anyone, this is a little tangent from where we're going, but I think for anyone to expect their husband to meet all their needs, or their spouse, anytime you expect your spouse to meet all your needs, you're going to be disappointed. Because they're human. That's why we have a team. That's why we have a community. That's why we have friends.
I'm gonna go back for a hot second because I think what we're talking about is self-awareness, self-identity, self-assured, all those things. But how can I be that, especially if I'm an introvert, right? Because things that you're talking about, I'm not saying myself. I'm not necessarily 100% introvert.
No, I wouldn't think
so. But I'm just speaking for those that might feel that way about themselves. Taking a trip like, to, with you and your girlfriends.
Anywhere.
And if you listen to any of Marita's other podcast episodes, she talks about how she's lucky that they still friends today. So go listen to that. So let's go listen to that. But, for those people that feel like, hey, you know what? I want to be a part of a tribe, but I don't know how to because I don't know what to say. I feel like I'm socially awkward or whatever the situation is, it is. And I know that I've been this way for X amount of time, whether I'm a real techie, because a lot of technical people, fall back, and so same thing, like you said, those with numbers, all those type of things. So if that is my personality, but I know that in order for me to get to the next level in my life, the next stage of my life, and without feeling like I'm lonely, because we have family members who has told us, you know what, I'm sitting in this chair, I'm just lonely, I don't know what to do, and so how do we get to that next level, especially if we stick to that title of introvert?
Yes, well, I know that you all share my faith, and you would agree that a lot of that is really the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I teach in the concepts of the personalities is this is a starting place. This is not the end. Just because you are this certain personality type doesn't mean that we as humans cannot learn skills that are not natural to us. And the Holy Spirit can help us with that. If you are lonely, you desire community and connection, prayer for that is a big deal. But then you've also got to take that step and say, I'm not going to just stay here. And if we were to do a personality analysis on the life of Christ, we would find out that he has the strengths of all four personality types and the weaknesses of none. And as Christians, I believe our ultimate goal is to be like Christ.
Yes.
And so if we're going to be like Christ, we are going to need to learn skills that are not natural to us. And if we step forward in faith, the Holy Spirit will be faithful to help us with that. But we've got to take that step. And so, again, it is sometimes scary for someone who is an introvert to take that step out and go to that art class, that painting class, that woodworking class, that gardening class. But most communities have a variety of things going on in any given day or any given weekend. And going to something like, I'm going to an event today, this afternoon. I'm going to a large public gathering. And honestly, going to something like that is not fun by yourself. And if you're feeling lonely to begin with, going to a large public gathering by yourself is going to be apt to make you feel even more alone as you look at people who are kind of with their tribe having a good time. But if you go to a class, like I said, art class, woodworking, whatever, Bible study, you go to a smaller group. I have a friend who teaches an art class, and I went to it, and she then asked me, will you help me teach this class? Because she needed help. Not teach it, but work with each of the people in the class. And it happened to be all ladies. But what I observed is as the several hour class went on, bonding was taking place. Defenses were coming down. And these were all people who, for the majority, have never painted anything before. And they're in this art class that my friend who has a degree in fine arts was teaching. And she was brilliant. She set these people up for success. And each person left with a finished, framed piece of art that they had just done. But as I watched everybody working together, the defenses came down. And so even if you went to that class all by yourself, you could begin to make connections with people. And so those adult education type programs, this one happened to be administered through a program called OLLI, which is nationwide. It's Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. And that people could look that up, OLLI, and see if there are classes in their area. But cities have different kinds of classes available. And I think for someone who's an introvert, yes, it's hard to get out of the chair and go to that, but I think it's much easier to go to a small class where people are focused on an activity. And then as you get engaged in that activity, the defenses come down.
So I'm going to stay with me for a second. I want to paint you a picture that I see as you're speaking, right? My mind, it just goes crazy sometimes. And so I, in elementary school, used to wear this big orange belt, right? And I used to stand on the corner and watch traffic for these kids, make sure they're crossing, the red light or the green light, whatever it is. So I was a safety, right? I had to make sure that people were getting back and forth to school and, all that type of stuff. And what I'm getting at is that sometimes we get caught up in that safety, being in that position of, hey, you know what? I have to make sure I'm okay, try and make sure other people are okay. So we don't want to step off the curb. We make sure we're 8 inches away from it, whatever the situations are. And now you're talking about faith. Now you saying, no, like I need to give up control. So how do I do that? Especially if I'm going to give up control to something that I don't see. And I maybe barely even believe in, because yes, it sounds good. It sounds cliche to say, hey, I'm Christian or whatever it is, right? But to really give up and to give in to the Holy Spirit, to a higher being, a higher calling, whatever it is, that's really, really, really unsafe in some situations, that we might say to ourselves. So even in that, so how do we deal with that safety issue?
Well, I think, to quote, go back to some basic AA, Alcoholics Anonymous teaching, is you don't change until the pain gets bad enough. And, if you prefer, you want to just sit on your lazy boy and watch TV, and that's what you want to do, then, there's really nothing wrong with that if you have the time and so forth to do that, and that's what you want to do. But if you're lonely, you need to hurt badly enough. You've got to feel that emptiness badly enough to be willing to step outside of your comfort zone. And it's hard to do. No question. I have a friend in my group of girlfriends, in fact, actually one of the ones I went to Turks and Caicos with, and she's very much an introvert, and she was new in town, and she volunteered at a ministry in our town that's for what they call the working poor, those who have jobs, who have cars, who have cell phones, but still can barely make ends meet. And this is a ministry that is in our town, and this friend volunteered there. And the person who was directing the ministry asked her some questions and realized she didn't really have any friends. And so she connected her with my group of girlfriends. And the very first time she showed up, she reached out to me as the director of this ministry had encouraged her to do. And I said, oh, we have a gathering coming up next week. You should come. And this gal, I can tell you, is very, very introverted. And she is also a CPA, retired, but by trade a CPA. And she showed up at this group of us the first time, walked in the door to one of my friends' houses where we were having a gathering, and didn't know a soul. And she knocked on the door and we opened the door, and she's been a part of the group ever since. But she had to need a support group badly enough. She had moved to Lubbock, where I live, for a specific friend, and that specific friend had the relationship had gone south, we'll just say. And so she was feeling very alone. She had no family here, no friends here, and she was all alone. And so that pain was bad enough that she was able to overcome that, to push herself to step outside of her comfort zone.
I have to say that you have really, really given some food for thought today. It has been really a pleasure. And for those individuals who are looking to build their community like Bridgerton or something along those lines, right? Where can they contact and talk to you, to understand, hey, maybe this is what my personality is, and I keep attracting CPAs and accountants, whatever it is in my circle, so where can they find you and get your information and celebrate the 20-year anniversary of your book?
Well, thank you for that. My blog that is for women 60 plus, and women under 60 would benefit from what's there as well. But everything on the blog is written kind of from a framework that you're retired and you don't have children at home. So it's geared towards that age group. That is thebestlifeproject.com. However, it's very important that it's best-life project. If you don't put the hyphen in, you'll go somewhere else. Or you can just Google it, Best Life Project, and put in 60 plus, and with the 60 plus, you'll find it. So that's the site. And I put about 2 blog posts up a week. I was just working on one before I talked to you. And so we have about 2 new blog posts a week, and I have different contributors. And also I'm always looking for new contributors who have relevant content to add. And the blog does have a Christian kind of underpinning. Not every blog post, like I post a dinner party I had, I post recipes, and that's not, an overtly Christian entity, but we won't post anything that is against biblical truth. So that's where that is. And then my information on my book, Wired That Way. The best thing is the book is on Amazon, but to get a little closer is go to thepersonalities.com, the word THE, and then personalities, plural.com. And there we have a personality profile that people can take, and there's a free resources section that has speeches of mine and my mother's, who's now deceased, but we have some of our speeches on that topic are available, and all the podcasts that I have been doing for the 20th anniversary of Wired That Way are listed on that free resources section as well. And, of course, the No Fruit podcast will be listed there when it's available.
Wonderful. Yes. This is a great thing, the communities that you're building for women who are over 60 and those a little bit approaching 60. Because, again, I think the tools that you're sharing will help those 30 plus, as we're evolving and knowing what to expect when that time comes.
Yeah.
So with all
it's just not a mommy website.
Yes.
It's not. It's not where we deal with how do you calm your
but
toddler when
it's
they're
dealing
having
with
a temper
yourself. Yeah, it's looking at your own independence in yourself. So again, it gives us the goals, what to look forward to, because I don't think we talk enough about that. So I applaud you on this and again the community that you're building. So again, thinking about community and thinking about togetherness. If you could sing a duet with anyone in the world, living or deceased, we all want to know, who would you sing that duet with?
I would sing it with Sandi Patty.
Okay.
And Sandi Patty was in her career heyday when I was writing my Christian books, and I used to see her at the Christian Booksellers Association convention on an annual basis when she was in her heyday. And she has such a strong and powerful voice that it would overcome the fact that I can't sing at all.
Well, good choice. Good choice.
I remember watching her one time at the Christian Booksellers Association convention, and she's just amazing. And she's heavier than I am. We'll just put it that way. And I leaned over to my mother and said, "That's why I can't sing. I don't have enough resonance."
Yes. You don't have enough breath to push all the way through. Yes.
Yeah.
But you were able to do other great things, and we thank you so much for all that you have put out into the world and what you've shared with us today. We thank you so much. Anything else?
I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else, Marita, that you like to share?
I think we're good. I do. I do want to throw out here one last thing in closing. The Bible verse that I use as kind of the foundation for teaching on the personalities is Romans 12:18. And it applies to everything we've been talking about here. And that verse breaks down into 3 parts. It says, if possible. So it's like God is telling us, this is a goal. This is something you should strive for. It's not something you can do, but it's a goal, if possible. So far as it depends on you, which means it's whose responsibility? mine individually. So it's my responsibility to get outside of the box, to get outside of my fears. And then the last part says, be at peace with all men. So if possible, so far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. And I'd like to leave our listening audience with that.
And so, in addition to that, I want everyone that's listening, please don't wait to do this. Do it now. Do it intentionally. Start today.
Well, you're motivated.
And ask yourself, am I preparing for my next season, or am I just reacting to it? So I want y'all to think about that for a second. Let it marinate with you as you move on. Marita, thank you very much for coming on to the show.
Thanks.
And I thank y'all very much for listening to the No Fruit Podcast. And we'll talk to you just a little bit later.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the No Fruit Podcast, where we bring you fruitful conversations, ripened wisdom, and love that's deeply rooted. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little inspiration in their day. Until next time, stay rooted in love, and remember, every seed you plant today shapes the fruit of tomorrow.